हेलो अरुण भाई।
हाँ हेलो।
आप अकेले हैं क्या?
नहीं ज्ञाना भाई, अभी लोग ज्वाइन हो रहे हैं। अभी तो 12
ओके।
पार्टिसिपेंट्स ऑलरेडी दे रहे हैं।
हाँ हाँ।
अरुण भाई आपको को होस्ट असाइन किया है।
ओके डन अमृत भाई done।
अरुण भाई आपका बैकग्राउंड अच्छा था।
थैंक यू थैंक यू।
अरुण भाई, ये बैकग्राउंड कैसे लेकर आएंगे?
कुछ नहीं, आपको मोर में जाना है।
एक्स्ट्रा चार्ज लगेगा।
हाँ, चलेगा
ऑन
भाई।
पेमेंट बेसिस ओनली।
हाँ हाँ, ठीक है ठीक है।
आपको मोर मोर में जाकर, लास्ट में जो
हाँ,
मोर है उसमें जाकर मीटिंग सेकेंड मीटिंग, सॉरी वन सेकेंड,
कर दिया।
सॉरी मैं आपको गलत चीज बता रहा हूँ। एक सेकेंड। सो व्हाट यू हैव टू डू इज, ओके, आई थिंक, या ये आप डायरेक्ट अपनी इमेज पे क्लिक करिए, तो वहां पे
हम्म,
वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड अप्लाई करके आ जाएंगे।
नहीं आ रहा
तो
है, रेज
सिर्फ
हैंड।
अपने इमेज पे क्लिक करिए। आपका जो वीडियो दिखा रहा होगा ना, तो उस पर क्लिक करिए।
किया, क्लिक किया, नहीं हो रहा है। पिन, रेज
वो नाराज हो
हैंड,
जाएगा।
रीनेम।
नहीं 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 नहीं, मेरा स्क्रीन पे तो दिखा रहा है, पता नहीं ऐसे क्यों आपसे नाराज है शायद। ओके, ज्ञाना भाई सिर्फ अभी ऑनलाइन दिखा रहे थे।
अमृत का है।
अमृत भाई,
पीडीएफ मैसेज के ऑनलाइन आने के लिए। क्या हो गया, सो गए क्या अरुण भाई?
नहीं हम कुछ फॉरवर्डिंग्स पढ़ रहा है जो अभी मेरे को बोलना है।
ओहो। ए, सबका बैकग्राउंड आता, मेरे को बैकग्राउंड चाहिए, कैसा करते बताओ प्लीज। पीडी कैसा करते बताओ पीडी।
अरे आपको अपने इमेज पे क्लिक करना है, यू हैव टू क्लिक ऑन योर इमेज।
ओके।
देखिए बैकग्राउंड पूछेगा, वो चॉइस करने बोलेगा।
ऊपर एक प्लस का साइन रहेगा, उसमें क्लिक करिए।
हाँ, वो प्लस का साइन को आपको ऐड करना है ना, उसको तो आपको ऐड
हाँ
करना पड़ेगा।
हाँ, प्लस का साइन में क्लिक करिए, आपको पूरा लिस्ट है जो फोटो से हो जाए।
यू कैन
अरे
सेलेक्ट
हाँ।
फ्रॉम द
बैकग्राउंड
इमेज।
लिखा हुआ देर इज।
ओह गॉड, वेरी गुड, आई एम एक्साइटेड, सुपर एक्साइटेड।
नहीं आया भाई।
कोई बात नहीं, नेक्स्ट टाइम आप मेरे पास ट्यूशन लेने आ जाए। वैसे आपका बैकग्राउंड अच्छा है।
11 भैया मिला आपको?
नहीं।
वो प्लस का साइन दिखता है ना, बैकग्राउंड ब्लर लिखा हुआ होगा, नो बैकग्राउंड लिखा होगा, नो वीडियो लिखा होगा, उसके ऊपर देखिए प्लस का साइन होगा।
नहीं है बच्चा, वही तो प्रॉब्लम हो गया ना, नहीं हो रहा है।
तो कुछ issue होगा।
एग्जिट हो गया, नहीं दिखा रहा है। लॉन्ग प्रेस करने से भी नहीं आ रहा है।
और एक बड़ा बटन रहेगा, उसको दबा दो, पूरे चला जाएगा।
देखिए।
बड़ा से पत्थर ले लो, बीच में रखो, सब बराबर रहेगा।
हाँ। ए சொல்றா டேய்।
गिव मी 10 मिनट्स, और कुछ काम है देन गेट
ए சொல்றா எப்படி பண்றதுன்னு।
बैक। जस्ट गिव मी 10 मिनट्स गया ना, और बीच में एक काम है, हम कंप्लीट करके आता।
ओ श्योर श्योर प्लीज, सॉरी।
गरम दिया ये क्यों ऐसा? डॉल्फिन এনেকৈ মাথা থাকে তোৰ বেবি ডলফিন।
अ, कब स्टार्ट होएगा अभी?
In another, I think in another 5 minutes it will start off.
ओके ओके।
और मैं ये वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड बोलते हैं क्या इसको?
हमको ये तो आइडिया नहीं है।
या ना,
हम्म,
तेरा स्क्रीन को हल्का से हटाओ, जब मल्टीपल स्क्रीन दिखाई दे रहा है, जैसे मेरे अमृत अरुण सब दो दो तीन दिन दिखाई दे
हाँ
रहा है,
हाँ हाँ हाँ
मल्टीपल
हाँ
स्क्रीन दिखाई दे रहा है ना, तो
हाँ।
स्क्रीन में तेरा सबसे लास्ट कॉर्नर में तेरा फोटो रहेगा।
मेरा
तेरा फोटो,
पॉप
तेरा
पॉप अप
फोटो
है।
है। हाँ, पॉपअप है
पॉप
ना।
अप है हाँ।
हाँ, उसको टच करो।
लॉन्ग प्रेस करना है कि जस्ट स्ट्रेच करना है?
तुम टच करो बस से।
ओके।
नीचे ऑप्शन आएगा, देखो वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड करके।
नहीं आया।
फिर अमृत भाई तेरे समझा सकता है। पर अमृत ही ये तेरे सिखाना पड़ेगा। अमृत भाई।
इधर दूसरा में वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड करके आया।
हाँ, वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड में सेट कर लो।
मेरा उसमें इमेज में नहीं जा रहा है वो।
ऐड करने से इमेज में जाएगा, तेरे वर्चुअल बैकग्राउंड जाने से जो भी डिफॉल्ट
देखिए
बैकग्राउंड है वो रहेगा। ब्लर, अभी देखो मेरा ब्लर हो गया, देखो पीछे कुछ नहीं है मेरा।
व्हाट्सएप में देखिए हम भेजा है वो, लाइक प्लस वाला साइन आपको नहीं आ रहा है क्या?
नहीं आ रहा है बोला मेरे को।
ओ, फिर तो कुछ और प्रॉब्लम।
ठीक है, नेक्स्ट टाइम देख लेंगे इसमें भी। मे बी ऐप अपडेटेड नहीं होगा। वेलकम सारा मैम।
Hello, thank you very much. So happy to be here with you. Yeah.
या एक 5 मिनट, एक 5 मिनट रुकते हैं मैम, कुछ और भी ऐड हो रहे हैं।
Can you hear properly? You're hearing, is my audio coming okay?
Yeah,
Yes,
it
yes,
is
ma'am.
clear, man.
Yes, ma'am. Very clear.
Yes, yes, yes. I will request all participants to keep mute to their mic, uh, not to interfere with Harman's talk.
Will we start in a few minutes? Or what are you waiting?
Yeah, ma'am,
You're,
just 2 minutes, 2 minutes more.
yeah, sure.
Okay, we are going to start our webinar. Uh, just as all we know, this is about our very pre-owned Birdman of India, Dr. Salim Ali ji, as we celebrating our ANI Bird Week. Uh, During this week, there are many events are we have organized, and this is a part of it. And I will request our club president, Naman Avians Club president, Sri Arun, to introduce uh, Tara ma'am. Over to you, Arun bhai.
Good evening to all the people joining us for the webinar. Welcome, Tara Gandhi ji. Ma'am, it's an honor to have you on board here. Uh, I don't think I should, everyone on the board needs an introduction. Tara ji needs an introduction. But for the ones who are here for the first time and few other club members from our team, Tara ma'am is associated with Dr. Salim Ali ji as a student, MS degree student in a field ornithology. During her MSc days, she was in the field of ornithology. She was a student of Dr. Salim Ali ji. Presently, after the completion, she had been part of a lot of other teams, very national and international bodies like the WWF, the National Biodiversity Authority, MS Swaminathan Research Institute in Chennai. She has also been a part of a lot of studies, status studies on different sanctuaries and national parks in India, particularly, and it's very honored that she's also having a great interest in the Nicobar Islands. She was a part of the fauna study of the Great Nicobar Islands. I was told that she was being here also. I never got an opportunity to meet her. The ma'am is also being working for the slender lollies. Apart from the ornithology, ma'am was also part of few other wildlife studies like the slender lolly studies in Chennai, coastal waste management issues. Presently, she is the vice chairman of the Wildlife Trust of India board and also committee members for the BNHS, Madras Natural History Society, and Institutional Ethics Committee of the IIT Madras. She is also the editor of Dr. Salim Ali's writing and talks and the author's book and popular articles on nature. He has been also looking at it, and I am honored to introduce her because in 2018, I met ma'am personally in Bangalore. She might not be remembering me. I was a very young guy when I met her in 2017 or 18. It was a very small meeting, and it was lovely meeting ma'am that time also. Ma'am, once again, welcome on board. I think ma'am can take over.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. And I'm really delighted to be speaking on Dr. Salim Ali in time around his birthday, which is coming up on 12th of November. So I know this is on honor of his birthday as well as whole Bird Week. And particularly happy to be giving this talk to the Andaman Avians Club. Andamans is very special to me, as you mentioned. I have had the opportunity to visit many times, and I hope it continues in the future as well. So now to talk about Dr. Salim Ali, I would like to make a presentation, which I request you to share for me. You'll be sharing the screen. So this is about Dr. Salim Ali's life and his work, and you will see as my talk goes along that his life and his work were one, actually. So he really lived for nature conservation and for ornithology, and his work also contributes entirely towards that. So could you share the screen, please? I'm sorry, I couldn't do it myself. I'm not very good at computers and things like that.
Amritji is, one second, Amritji?
I'm sorry?
No, I'm just calling Amrit to do the needful, man, just to make the presentation, share the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So Yeah. So, is it good? I'm wondering how I can come on the screen. I don't know, but it's all I can speak. I can carry on. So Salim Ali, we all know that he was so well known. I mean, that he is really well known as, yes, you could do the next slide itself. That Salim Ali is so well known as the great Indian ornithologist, as the father of Indian ornithology. Could you go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry, I'm making you do this, but
No problem. Amritji,
yeah.
can you go on the next slide?
Yeah, next slide. Yes, I'll tell you. So who's doing the slides, Mr. Arun Singh or Amrit?
Amrit is coordinating the slides.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm just wondering if I can also come on the screen, but it's not happening. Never mind. So to carry on, we know that he was so well known, India's Birdman, greatest, and also father of Indian ornithology. But what was not so well known about him was that he was responsible for advancing the whole concept of conservation in India. He went much beyond ornithology, actually. And when he actually started, ornithology wasn't even known in India. There was no such subject in India at all. And it was also kind of looked down, So he actually says himself, Salim Ali himself says, this is his quote here, that professional zoologists were inclined to look down on bird watching as merely a silly way of killing time by the idle rich. So it was thought to be something that, very rich people who have nothing to do, but, have a lot of money and have a lot of leisure time, that they go out bird watching. Because I think at that time, the British were very popularized bird watching a lot. And so bird watching is associated with them rather than with a serious study. But Salim Ali, he studied the birds of every region in the subcontinent. And he really traveled the entire country, length and breadth, including, and he also was a pioneer in bringing interdisciplinary studies into bird studies. So he didn't want to focus only on the birds, but he's focused upon their ecology, their zoology, their botany. He brought in entomology, he brought in geography, even brought in economics to show how economically important they were. So next slide, please. Yeah. So, and luckily, he was also during his lifetime, he was really very revered and very respected, and he was a very popular figure. He was always mobbed by people, and he was very much a popular person. And apart from the books that he wrote, there were a lot of books written about him also, children's books, other books written about him. Even an Amar Chitra Katha came out about him, which is quite interesting. And a couple of stamps in his honor, and a lot of radio broadcasts also about him and by him were there. Yeah, next slide, please. And he was given a lot of awards and honors. He was given the Padma Vibhushan by the government of India. And then the Paul Getty Award is like a Nobel Prize for conservation. And this last years, in 1985, he died in 1987. He was nominated to Rajya Sabha. Yeah, next slide, please. So let's see what was his background. It's interesting to know what his background was. Who was Dr. Salim Ali from? What was his background? What was his family like? And so that gives an idea about his life also. So he came from this distinguished family and large family in those days, Bombay, now Mumbai, and they were very close-knit and loving family. And they were all highly professional people. Some were in administrative services, some were in politics, some were in different professions and businesses as well. And I don't know if you can see a little circle around where the little boy here in black, the circle around, that is Salim Ali sitting there in his, surrounded by his nice family. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, next. So he was actually an orphan. Salim Ali was an orphan because his parents died when he was just 3 years old. But he had 8 siblings older than him. He was the youngest. And when the parents died, an uncle and aunt took over the entire family. They didn't have children, so they adopted all the 9 children, and they brought them up with a lot of love and care. They brought them up, and so Salim Ali grew up like that. But when he was he was not very interested in studies. He didn't like maths, and he just went along like that. He was more a playful kind of a boy, but he did have a dream. He says he had a dream of taking up zoology, particularly ornithology, as a profession when he grew up, and to become an intrepid explorer. And listen to this, a big game hunter. He wanted to be a hunter. Next slide, please. So those days, hunting was quite accepted, I'm talking about early 20th century, like 1906, 1907, like that, when he was young. Hunting was something that the privileged classes used to do, the British used to do, and it was accepted almost like a status symbol. So he wanted to be a hunter. Yeah, next, please. Next. So when he was about 9 years old, he got a wonderful gift that he loved, which is an air gun. His uncle presented him with a gun, and he was so happy about it. And he used to take it out and start shooting small birds, particularly sparrows. And they lived in these big mansions with big gardens around them, and a lot of trees and things. And so that there were a lot of sparrows. They also had a little farm somewhere nearby where a lot of sparrows used to come. And so he would shoot these sparrows and bring them home, and the cook used to make little snacks out of the birds, the little birds for the children. They were small children, they used to do that. But one day, look what happened. He said, of course, he also used to miss a lot, and many escaped, so that he was lucky that way. They were lucky. So look what he says. He says, so on one of my rare occasions of successful murder, he calls it murder, I noticed that the victim, which was intended to be a common house sparrow, bore a curious yellow patch on the throat. Yeah, next, please, next slide. So he sees this bird is looking a bit different, and he notices it's different. And so he takes it home to his family and asks them, what is this bird about? And nobody knew what it was all about. His uncles and aunts, nobody had any idea what this bird with a yellow patch on the throat was. So one of his uncles actually was connected to BNHS, the Bombay Naturalist Society. And he said, why don't you take it there and get it identified? So the little boy goes off there, and then he says he was really frightened to see this big brick, big stone building, and when he went inside, he was frightened by, this picture's from Amma Chitra Katha. It's quite sweet and nice, and he was frightened by all the skulls on the wall and everything. But he went inside. He'd never met a white man in his life. He's just about 10 years old, and he was quite scared. But then the secretary, Mr. Miller, was very kind and nice and explained to him that this is a yellow-throated sparrow. It's not a normal sparrow. And he showed him around the place, and not only did he identify the birds, he also showed the boy around the place. So this is what Salim Ali says. He says, like ripples from a pebble dropped in water, the circles of my interest in ornithology widened. So this is when, he really started getting interested in this subject here. Next, please. So then he grew up, and as he was growing, he became a teenager. The parents, the family, his adopted parents, were a little bit worried that he was not very good in studies. They tried to put him into accountancy, chartered accountancy, and all that. They didn't want to do any of those things. He just managed to get through matriculation. He didn't even do very well. He couldn't do even his BA and all that properly. So they said, okay, if he can't study, at least let him do business. So they sent him off to Burma, Myanmar, when he was just a teenager, to try to learn the business there. So he went, but he never succeeded much. He didn't like it much. But he did manage to, go around the forest and get to know about the birds. Yeah, please. So while doing that, next slide, please. So while doing that, he became restless. He said he felt he really wanted to study this subject of ornithology. He was wondering how he can do it. He said there was no, was not there in the university. University where training, practical training. He got an opportunity to go to Germany. He went to Berlin University Museum, And there he got an opportunity to really learn serious bird studies, ornithology, from these professors called Spacemen and others. They learned about the life of them and their well for 2 years. And the next slide, please. So, next slide. So when he comes back to India, he came back to India after around 1930. He wanted to explore India. So India, we're so lucky in India if you look at it in the subcontinent as well as in the islands. Look at the ecosystems that we have. I mean, ranging from the Himalaya mountains to the mangroves that are there in Andaman Nicobar Islands, the coastal areas, the rainforest that you see in the last 3 slides, as well as northern India, the desert, the scrublands, the wet. So he wanted to know what are the birds that live in all those particular places? How are they adapted? He wanted to know the special adaptations of these birds, and he wanted to go all over the place. Yeah, next, please. Next slide. But can I go to the next slide? Yeah. So when he comes back to India, he wanted to do all that, but he had no money. He had no job. And he also was married by then. So he's supposed to be looking after, supporting his wife as well. So in a quandary, it was like that. But his family was very, very supportive. They always stay together with them. His really wonderful any difficulties, but he say that let me do a survey of Indian states and do the bird surveys. So they accepted. They gave him some little bit of money, not much. And so he used very adventurously. He went on these rickety jeeps with very little money and bullock carts. And though the royal families gave him access and they gave him logistic support, but he did it all gratis. He didn't earn any money out of that. Yeah, next, please. So next, he continued to do this. He traveled from place to place on these expeditions. Can you move to the next? Is it? Yeah, please move to the next slide. Can you hear me? Yes, there we are. Okay, so they spent months and months together, and his wife was also a very adventurous lady, luckily, for him. Everybody's wondering how she's going to, adapt to his lifestyle. But she did, and in the previous slide, you'll see a picture of her also. She lived in all those camps and tents and small little, they even converted a small little, a coach into a home for a while. And you can see that is really funny. And she's there peeping out over there. She made a very comfortable home. Even these tents and things she used to, she lived happily with him. And that was quite remarkable. And because he worked completely gratis, and he did all these studies. So yeah, next slide. So all the information and knowledge that he got from all these studies, all these surveys and travels went into this book, Book of Indian Birds. And it was his first book published in 1941. And it became so popular that it went into several editions and became a bestseller. And for once, he made some money out of it also. Yeah, next slide, please. So then he continued with these countrywide, expeditions. He went to the Run of Kutch, he went to Chilika, he went to the north and south, again in very adventurous on camelback and on boats. And yeah, next, please. Next, and then even on elephant back and on foot. He went on foot all the way up to Kailash Manasarovar. Those days, the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra was not simplified like it is now. We can go by flight and all that. But those days, you could only go by foot. So he actually trekked all the way up to 16,000 feet to see Manas Rover and to see what birds were nesting over there, because a lot of birds that nest over there come down to the the southern part of our country for the winter. So this is how he gathered all this information. Yeah, next please. So from this, so many different books came through, because from all his travels, he wrote these books on Sikkim and Kerala and Himalaya and all these places. He brought out books on all these travels that he did. And then the biggest contribution was this 10-volume Handbook of the Birds of India and Pakistan, with collaboration with his long-time associate and friend Dylan Ripley. So he wrote all these books, and then also his autobiography he wrote called Fall of a Sparrow, in which he actually commemorated the sparrow which he killed, and which led him to develop this great interest, the yellow-throated sparrow, which developed his interest when he was 10 years old, which lasts him a lifetime. Yeah, next, please. Next slide. Yeah. So apart from books, he also wrote articles. He wrote scientific articles, of course. He wrote monographs and all that. But he also wrote very simple language articles, because he really wanted people. He wanted people to get interested in birds. He really wanted people to get interested in birds. So and because of that, he wrote in the BNHS Journal magazine also called Hornbill, and he wrote in lots of newspapers and all sorts of remote little small NGOs, their newsletters. He would write simple language articles about birds, and in that he'd be a little humorous. He'd say funny things about himself. He says, people think that I'm a little shady character because I kind of poke around among bushes and I poke around with my binoculars and camera. They wonder if I'm a spy or something. And actually, I'm just looking at the birds. And he says, he laughed at himself. He says, look like a khaki-clad garage mechanic. I look like a mechanic. He laughed at himself. So he made his articles kind of interesting and funny as well. And this is a way of reaching out to people. He really wanted people's interest to be sparked. He wanted people to get interested and excited about bird watching and all that. Yeah. Next, please. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So we'll go back a little bit to when India got independence. So as I mentioned before, that the British were, when they were the ones who really popularized bird watching, and they were very into it. And so the BNHS was actually like a club for them. They had made the BNHS into a kind of an amateur bird watchers, amateur naturalists kind of a club where they gather together in the evenings and talk about what they did, about the hunting that they did, about the birds that they saw. And though they were quite knowledgeable, it was not, it was like more like a social place. So after British left, when independence came and British left, BNHS was taken over by, was handed over to Indians. And so Salim Ali became the head. And Salim Ali, once he became the head, he converted it into, he developed it into a scientific institution. From a kind of a club, he made it into a scientific institution where people could do serious bird study and research and nature conservation on the ground projects. And he got the journal going, which is still one of the most prestigious journals in the country. So BNHS, the same building that he went to as a child, got transformed into a different institution altogether. Yeah, please. Next slide, please. And so it was again a time of huge change, time for huge transformation and transition, because new laws came in. Once independence came, there were new laws for wildlife protection, nature protection laws came. And Salim Ali himself, he immediately abided by the laws, and he also understood that there's no need to shoot any longer, especially no need to collect birds any longer, because already all the collections were there. And there were such better methods that he had learned to study the live bird, to trap it and to look at it, to measure it, and to study all its, and to observe birds in nature as live birds and not the dead ones. So he said though he was a hunter and shooter at one time and he enjoyed it, he put his gun down, not because of any other reason, except that he also found that there was a decline in bird populations compared to what he had known when he was young. And so he said, there's no time to shoot any longer. And he put away his gun and he said, now is the time to look through cameras and binoculars. And that is what has stayed with us ever since. And he vehemently was really condemning mass shooting happened earlier. People used to thousands of birds in Bharatpur and places, and then also poaching of rare animals was happening. All that he condemned very badly. Yeah. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So what did he do? He brought in scientific study of birds to show how useful they are and what their role is in the natural cycle of life, nature's cyclic processes. So he said, now look at the sunbird. It's a pollinator. And then the birds like hoopoes, which are insectivorous, they control insect pests of agricultural crops, and they keep insects under control. And birds like the barbet and other frugivorous birds, they spread the seeds of the breeding in that way. And owls and birds of prey make huge contribution by consuming rats and mice that can attack grains and finish off agricultural produce in no time. So birds are doing this, and then even the water birds, they are fertilizing the water bodies, and the fertilized water bodies is saving the farmers a lot of money instead of going for chemical fertilizers. They can use the natural fertilizer from the guano of these birds, which gets to the water. So he wanted to emphasize that all these birds of different species are contributing not only to the natural cycle, but to the economy of India, because if you control insect pests, you control other pests, it's such a great contribution that you can make. Yeah, next please, next slide. Then he went into a study of migration, the migratory birds, and it has always fascinated humans. And the great thing about Salim Ali was that he was fascinated also. He didn't say, I know everything. He said, he was always, it's talking about wonder, I really wonder how this happens. I wonder how that happened. And even now, people are wondering how birds can undertake this amazing journey, like the Arctic turn. Look at it from North Pole to South Pole and back. It does every single year. And so he said, next slide, please. He did a study of the Indian migration. Next slide. So through the techniques that he learned in Berlin, BNH started doing banding, of birds, and also keeping track of where they go and come from. So look at the amazing journeys that they do from the far north of the planet down to India, how they come. And Andaman Nicobar is actually in what is called the East Asian Australasian flyway. That a lot of birds come in that direction, and they generally stop in Andaman and they continue their work, their journey. So actually, the Andamans is a great stopover place for migratory birds, and it's actually even brushing another flyway called the Central Asian flyway. So both these flyways are passing through Andamans, and that is how valuable all our land masses are for these migratory birds. Yes, please, next one. So after seeing all this, what are the challenges for bird conservation and that are there in our country right now? And what Salim Ali also was deeply concerned about, because wherever he went, because he lived to 91. So he revisited many of the places that he'd been to as a younger man. And he was very distressed to see how anthropogenic, that is what people have done to the land, human interventions by way of, too many habitations, too much agriculture, infrastructure, big development projects, and pollution, all that have impacted the natural ecosystems of the wild. And apart from that, climate change in its own way, with so many adverse, sudden, hurricanes and all that happening nowadays, it has impacted the bird habitats in a very big way, and also the increasing temperatures. So all these and sea level rise, all that is impacting bird habitats. Yeah, next please. Next slide. So we've seen that we have all these wonderful these natural ecosystems in the country, but look what has happened to many of them. Next slide, please. We have actually, human intervention has been a bit excessive, like how mining is happening, even corals are being mined, and the deforestation is going on. Salim Ali was extremely distressed by the deforestation in Andaman and Nicobar, where the timber was being logged in a big way. And agriculture also has gone into natural forests and natural ecosystem. And of course, this city could be anywhere in India, this town full of people and full of buildings, not a single tree. And then a lot of areas also gone into monoculture plantations, which exactly are not biodiverse. You know, they don't have the good habitat for birds. Yeah, next, please. Next slide. So again, pollution, marine pollution from oil slicks and atmospheric pollution, solid waste, pesticides, and all the waste that is accumulated on our beaches. All these are spoiling the natural habitats of birds. Yeah, next please. So how does one address this challenge? And Salim Ali was deeply concerned that many species are highly endangered, and some have even got extinct, like the pink-headed duck. And then I don't need to tell you about the threatened endemic birds of Andaman and Nicobar. Salim Ali actually sent out teams to look at their status many years ago. In 1980s, he did that. Yeah. Next, please. So, despite all this, there's still a lot of hope, because institutions like the BNHS have come up, and many different NGOs like yourselves have come up for conserving birds, and they are getting more interested. So this is all part of Salim Ali's legacy. So Salim Ali, his legacy was to make BNHS into a big study, an organization for research, for conservation. And then he instituted fellowships for students, so the students could study there without any difficulty. They had the money to do it. And the other thing about Salim Ali was that he was very influential with the prime ministers of those days. During his time, the prime ministers were Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi, and he managed to influence the prime minister of his times to actually create national parks and sanctuaries, reserves for birds, and he was a very good advocate for nature conservation. So he was able to do that. And then he also got very huge projects from WHO and the Ministry of Aviation. So he did a major study of zoonotic diseases. Now, zoonotic diseases, we have now become familiar with them after COVID, because the viral infection of COVID came from an animal. So we are now very conscious of zoonotic. But those days, I'm talking about 80s, 90s, nobody knew very much about them. But Salim Ali did a major project of a zoonotic disease, which they thought was probably carried by migratory birds. Then he did another one that is really for humans, actually, because he studied bird hits in aircraft. Now, that's a very serious problem. Birds do hit accidentally the aircraft, and there's a loss of life, loss of airplanes. So he did a major study. So what are the birds? How can we stop it? And all that. And he was extremely interested in creating awareness, and for children and for adults. And believe it or not, he was one of the first few people who started the concept of citizen science. Citizen science has become so popular now. And he used to write, and even in his radio talks, he said, "Tell us, you write to BNHS, tell us if you see something interesting, some new bird or some new behavior, tell us." Yeah, next slide, please. So this was his legacy, actually. And it's being followed even today. So many NGOs, even governments, are making an attempt to do major cleanup drives. Now, the middle picture to see of a beautiful lake it was used to be a dump. And it was completely cleaned up and made into this beautiful pond, which has natural vegetation all around it, all with the effort of volunteers and people. And then there are also people like villagers are protecting birds. People are cleaning up the beaches. People are going in for surveys, for the bird surveys and night surveys, and people. So it's now become citizen science, actually a combination of people and governments and scientists all having to work together for the purpose of nature conservation and bird conservation. So finally, we talk about Salim Ali's vision. So what was his vision? He really emphasized the human connect with wildlife and birds and nature. So he emphasized and he said it is really for human well-being. Birds, our connect with birds, our connect with nature, our connect with animals is really helps humans also in such a big way. And it even gives us, a lot of solace that was seen during the time of the COVID, that people are locked up and the only life they could see outside was birds and squirrels and, nature. So it gave them a lot of solace to be able to see that there is some movement and life around. And just to quote what he said that what is now required is an understanding of the fact that human ecology is an integral part of nature conservation. That man's future cannot be considered separately from that of other life. So our life and natural life of birds, plants, animals are all an integral part. So thank you. That is I conclude with that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. It was really wonderful to hear from you. The life history of Salim Ali ji was a really interactive way of knowing him better. In fact, I was surprised to know few very new facts about him, new facts
Yes.
about his journey as an ornithologist, as the Birdman of India. I would request other members of the webinar, if there is any question or if there is any curious questions about Salim Ali ji, if anybody wants to ask something from Tara ma'am, you can go ahead, please. If anyone.
Well, you can ask me some easy questions. I don't mind.
Ma'am, I would ask a very simple question. Which was the year when you were doing an MSc with him?
Yeah, I did it in, actually, I finished in I started in 1983. And I did for 2 years the study. And my study was in Vandalur Reserve Forest outside Chennai. And my study was about the comparing natural vegetation of scrub jungle and monoculture plantations. So that was my thesis that Salim Ali allocated to me. And he was already 88 when he took me on as a student. And he told me, you better finish quickly, otherwise, I may not live. But he did live.
God.
He did live, and he signed my thesis and he approved it. So it was a very big solace for me, a very big honor for me, great honor. Yeah.
One more question, that too, I think from my side only, because I'm a curious person when it comes to knowing things. You are a student of Salim Ali ji. You have seen him very closely. You have seen the faces of the environment and natural system changing in today's environment also, in today's timeline. What things as a small club or as a club from the Andaman Avian Club you suggest us to focus on for the coming days?
On what? Sorry, what did you say last? Focus on what?
Focus on what should be the focus of the Andaman Avian Club as a small organization in Andaman Islands for the coming conservation challenges on the coming days?
Yeah, definitely you have a lot of challenges because, Andamans are now being looked at for tourism in a very big way, also for development in a very big way. Nicobar, they are planning also the holistic development over there. So I think your bird records, your nature records, what you are documenting is extremely important because sometimes, in the environment impact assessment that people do before they want to start any, like a new port or a new activity anywhere, suppose they want to convert some place into a habitation or into a factory or something, the environmental impact assessment people are not so good at recording what there is. So they sometimes they may say there are not many birds there. But if you can say, no, actually there are all these birds, we recorded them just last year or during last season, then it gives the value of that place, you know. And I think you have to be as you know, you're going out into the please keep birding a lot, please go everywhere that you can, as and link up with people. Andaman is such a long state from top to bottom. It is so long, and Nicobar is even further down. But if you can connect with people there locally and also get them interested in birds and in nature around them, then it'll be extremely valuable. If you can spread your influence, that will be really, you know, and maybe bring out some documentation on what happens in little places. There are a lot of books and literature on the general birds that one sees, but in certain niches you might see something different. In the mangroves you might see something different. In the rainforest you see something different, you know, and even in the agricultural scenario you might see something different. So I think that would be a very big contribution, and be vocal whenever you can about whatever you feel is not right that's happening around you. But basically, enjoy birding and spread your interest and love for birds and nature everywhere.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for those advice, ma'am. We would like to also inform you that the Andaman Avian Club, based on the recent issues of air guns in the islands, we have started an initiative called Udne Do Hame, where we are meeting the local people and asking them to surrender their air guns. And this work is going on well now.
Yes.
A lot of
Very good. Acha,
yeah, we have got a very good.
For wildlife, is it? Why were they having air guns?
It's obviously for wildlife. It's obviously for hunting birds, for hunting the species, and
No, I
though
thought
the
it was
experience.
scaring away wild boar and things like that. Not for that.
No. That hardly happens, ma'am. That hardly happens here. It's mainly because of the hunting. But we have got a very good support from South Andaman people, and we are now extending it to the other parts of the islands too. So we are trying
Excellent.
our best.
That will be
So,
excellent.
yeah, ma'am. We're looking forward to do more.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Anybody else has any question? Yeah, Amritji, please.
या मैम, बस मुझे ये जानना था कि सलीम अली जी का बर्ड्स के अलावा और कौन से पार्ट ऑफ वाइल्ड लाइफ में उनका ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट था, मतलब बर्ड्स के अलावा और किस वाइल्ड लाइफ में उनको ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट था?
So actually, you know, he was interested in all endangered species, even animals. So actually, I got to know about it because when I was looking at his radio talks, he's done a whole lot on endangered animals. And he's saying that this poaching of rhino is so bad, it shouldn't happen. And then the decline in the animal population is really bad. So he was interested in animals, in some of these charismatic big animals as well. But one has to realize that actually he also used to hunt at one time, and then he's even talked about how nice hunting is and how it will be good to hunt hangul and all that. But he suddenly changed all that. And he said that the population is declining and we have to protect them, and all the endangered species like bears and rhinos, and he was interested in them. Yeah. And surprisingly, he also very supportive of farmers. He said if parakeets are destroying your crops, we have to find a way of protecting your crops. So all that he was interested to do that. Yeah. It's not any one particular animal, but he was interested in the endangered animals.
Okay. Okay, team. Anyone else? Anyone have any queries or any questions? Can we close the session? Okay,
Good
I think.
evening, Arunji. Yeah, I'm Janardhan Sekia here. Good
Right.
evening, ma'am.
Good
Yeah, that
evening.
was a wonderful presentation from you. Thank you for enlightening us on this. Actually, I'm a new birder and I have just got a keen interest on this regarding insects and birds because I'm an
Hmm.
agriculture entomologist. So
Hmm.
the way it is related, the in intermediate problem is the pesticides right now,
Hmm.
if you think. So is there any scope or bill or any amendments regarding that we can implement for that? Because you see in central India and most of the South India, everywhere the pesticides have been applied in major way. And
Yes.
when
That, um,
most of the
well,
issues in
I don't know if there's any law against pesticides. I don't think there's a law against pesticides, but people are trying to use more and more organic pesticides now, and that is less harmful to birds because, I mean, as you're so right, the pesticide is a very big problem because the insects they get poisoned, and then the birds get
yes, ma'am.
poisoned through that, and all the insects become so less that the birds don't have enough insect to eat. So that is what Salim Ali is trying to advocate, that birds are the best insecticides, they're the best pesticides. That's what
Yes,
he
ma'am.
was
Because
trying
in
to say.
even we used to refer for bird perches in
Yeah.
agriculture crop field.
So actually, the traditional farmers, they do that. They even put little rice and things, on platforms for that the birds would come and encourage them to come. And
Yes,
they put perches, especially for owls. At night, you'll see white pots they put at
yes,
night. They put out and all that. So the traditional farmers know all these things. Unfortunately, pesticide is coming in such a big way. I think there's a big movement also now to try to move towards organic pesticides, the neem and all those things are getting more and more
yes.
popular. So let us hope those can be promoted bit better.
Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Janardhan ji. Thank you for the query. It was actually a good one. Anyone else? Anyone else on the board? Okay, I think we can close the session. So
I,
once again, thank you so much. Yeah, ma'am. Ma'am, would you like to add something?
I'm really impressed. I'm very happy, so very happy that there's an Andaman Avian Club and you have members, and that you are actively doing things that are not necessary, that are, I mean, associated things. Like I'm really very very pleased about your movement towards you know people giving up their air guns. It's such an important thing that you're doing. So I want to really thank you for inviting me. And I must thank Dr. Subramania, who introduced me to you all. So I really thank him for this. And uh, as I said before, Andaman is very special for me. I had done some surveys of national parks and sanctuaries, also participate in the biodiversity conservation prioritization project and all that. And I also went on personal holidays there. So it has been a very enriching, including Nicobar, where I went for a study. So I didn't actually, I'm not part of any major uh, program in Nicobar, but I did go for a survey over there of Galathea and Campbell Bay. So it's for me, I feel highly privileged to have had the opportunity to have anything to do with Andaman and Nicobar at all. And thank you again. I would thank you actually.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those kind words. We always look for your support and your blessings in the coming days also. Moreover, your guidance also. Um On behalf of the whole Andaman Avian Club, I sincerely express my gratitude towards your time you have given, your experience you have shared, and thank you once again, ma'am, for this wonderful experience, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you.
you. I'll leave now.
Sure, ma'am. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
It's a good show for everyone. Amrit bhai, congratulations for this lovely webinar of Andaman Nicobar Bird Week 2.0. So, signing off, everyone. Thank you. Good night. Have a great
Good night.
evening.
Good night. Good night. Thank you, sir.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.